Richard Hall to actually, share and launch this new journal.
Thank you, Mamadou. Hello, my name is Richard, and I'm based in education studies over in applied social sciences. I'm also a national teaching fellow, and working with Mamadou. And in particular, I'd like to thank Alan Brine in Library and Learning Services, working with Dave Parks, for their support in effectively trying to move forward pedagogic research and education research in the institution. What we've been trying to do is focus upon effectively developing a new or relaunching, sorry, a new journal on something that's called the DMU Academic Press. So if hopefully you've got these slides up and running. Back in 2010, we had a I'm gonna cut out of that. I'm just going to talk through this and then put some links in the sidebar, because my internet's kind of too dodgy, or it has been too dodgy this morning. Back in 2010, we had a national teaching fellow called Will Curtis, who launched something called Gateway Papers, which was a journal of pedagogic research, which was designed to support a continuum of staff development. Effectively, didn't want to work with the idea was eventually we might work with students, postgrad, undergraduate students, to try to get them to publish their work as well. What we had within that space was two issues that were only ever published in a limited print run, but also we had an online run as well, which is hosted on an old kind of server which died, wasn't supported institutionally and died. One of the things that we were trying to work with the library on was creating an actual academic press for the university, somewhere where we could have monographs, edited collections, research reports, where we could also have open access journals. I think it was really important to us that we had green open access journals that our staff could publish works in progress, full papers, case studies, which might have a kind of continuum really from kind of practice-based stuff right the way through to kind of theoretical stuff based in any educational setting. So we're thinking schools, we're thinking work with prisons, because we have a lot of prison educators, work in adult learning and adult education, work that might be being done with DMU local and societal impact and engagement, if we're thinking about the forthcoming Teaching and Learning Festival in March, for instance. Also work that's happening in practice within institutions or out on placement, within universities or out on placement. So our focus really was how do we create a space where people can publish, but also where people might get really mentoring about what it means to be on an editorial board, or what it means to be on to be an editor of a journal. So at the moment we have a small editorial board for Gateway Papers. It is there are 10 of us. Mamadou and I are picking up the kind of editors for this at the moment. But one of my real interests is, if anybody is interested, is coming forward, kind of approaching me, emailing me, dropping me a line to say that they would like to be mentored to become editors or to be on an editorial board, because we know there are a lot of early career staff who don't have a lot of experience within that. Equally, we would like to be able to support people in becoming reviewers, people who don't have review experience for international journals. We're trying to grow Gateway Papers so that it becomes nationally and internationally recognized, but we also want to see it as a space inside which people can engage really with the process of research, of pedagogic research, and to build on the strengths we've already got with a really rich national teaching fellow, DMU teacher fellow kind of cohort, but also our Vice Chancellor's Distinguished Teaching Awards. And now we've just seen our award winners for research engaged teaching, research-led teaching. We know that we have a really rich community there, and we want to be able to celebrate that, and we want to be able to work with people so that they can get published, so that they can demonstrate if they're going for other awards, if they're going for research-led teaching or engaged teaching, if they're going for teacher fellow or national teaching fellow, they have some evidence behind them to move their own career aspirations forward. So if you want to put forward ideas for a special issue, if you want to become a reviewer, if you want to be an author, if you want to be on the editorial board, we would love to hear from you, even if you have no experience. There's two final things that I want to say, and whilst Mamadou is talking about the second journal, I'm gonna pop in the chat some web links to the Gateway Papers itself. And forgive me, I think my web connection is too flaky for me to kind of to be doing too many things this lunchtime. The other two things I want to mention are, the first is having students involved as authors. One of the things that's in our learning, teaching and assessment strategy is effectively co-creation. It has been for a long time. I think one of the things that we are very strong at is working with to develop our students as thinkers and writers, and to try to connect scholarship and practice in their learning and understanding. So we are very interested in having special issues, or having students at an undergraduate level, master's level or PhD level writing for and testing their ideas. So if you have dissertation students whose work you feel would be valid and viable, perhaps not as a full research paper, but as a work in progress or as a case study, then that would be amazing to hear from you and from them. The second thing is, we do have at the moment, what we're going to have is a relaunch of all of those previous issues from 2010. We've also got an open call at the moment for academic practice and COVID-19. And we know that, as Mamadou and Jackie were talking about this morning, we know that the pandemic has really affected us in terms of our experiences, our well-being, our engagement with our students and ourselves. We also know that it's folded in on top of a lot of global uncertainty in terms of climate forcing, in terms of environmental degradation, in terms of financial crises, and the regulation, funding and governance of higher education more generally. So we are really interested in getting 500 word at this stage. I mean, if you want to write more, that's fine, but 500 word pieces from students and staff, including professional services staff, that's really important to us, about their experiences of their practice, their work, their intellectual work during the pandemic. And that can just be a very simple descriptive, where you're working from, the impact on your working, the way in which it's made you think about your work. And I'll post again in the notes just a link to that open call. And if you want to talk to me or Mamadou or any of the other members of the editorial board about that, please feel free to drop us a line. I'm gonna end there. If you do want to contact me, I'll put my contact details in the chat too. I will be, through Neela, contacting all of the, or putting out some dissemination materials around Gateway Papers to the rest of to all of the delegates, to the rest of the delegates, or everyone who signed up effectively, with more detail about the calls, more details about the kind of the open nature of the COVID-19 call, and also calling for your engagement and your interaction in Gateway Papers, because it isn't mine. It isn't Mamadou's, it's the institutions, and we want to use it to build self-confidence in our own academic and intellectual practice in terms of education and pedagogic research. Mamadou, I'm done. I'm gonna nip over to the comments and start spamming people with or disrupting you with lots of links. Is that all right?
Thank you very much, Rupert. You know, you're my mentor in terms of disruption. So thank you very much for all of that.
Can't get my internet access sorted though, can I?
Well, we have to work on that. But no, thank you very much. And just to recognize that Richard has been playing an invaluable role in the resuscitation and relaunching of both these journals as well. So thank you very much, Richard. The twin journal that we really want to launch as well at the same time is the Journal of Critical Southern Studies. I think Krishna, you might be able to just put the slide on so that I can just talk through the journal. Okay, whilst we wait for that, we recognize that when the Caesar talks about epistemicide, it talks about the wholesale destruction of knowledge systems. And then we also can talk about cognitive injustice, and which I mentioned earlier. And both of them talk about not recognizing kind of like the plurality of knowledge, not recognizing that there are alternative ways of knowing and being, and then being quite dominant in our in our configuration of ways of knowing and being. And I think this links to critical Southern perspectives. It links to the decolonization movement, because other ways of knowing and being from the South, there are limits to there are limits to Western knowledge, and we want to go beyond the edges of Western knowledge and being able to recognize what has, through a process of westernization and colonialism, obliterated or disenfranchised other ways of knowing and being. So we set up the Journal of Critical Science Studies about 2013, and we produced a few issues until 2015. And then, we stopped because we just did not have the capacity. Because as you might know, editing a journal, running a journal without any support can be quite difficult. So we have now, as Richard mentioned earlier, incorporated the Journal of Critical Science Studies within the DMU Press, and we're setting it up. We've got an international board that is already in existence. But like Richard said, we're quite keen to promote talent and also use it as a disruptive space within DMU and beyond, in terms of collating alternative ways of knowing and being, but also being able to kind of like attempt at dismantling particular ways of knowledge production, which are seen as the only viable and kind of like right ways of doing it. So the journal, we are relaunching it today. Like Richard said, we will encourage. For now, I'm also doubling as editor for the journal, but I'm looking for other people. My job is to set it up and to pass it on to other people who can do possibly better. So if there are people who are interested in becoming reviewers, in becoming editors, in working alongside other international scholars, I mean, we could share the link later. It is still under construction, but you would see like that we've got an editorial board, and we've got an advisory board as well. And these are made up of scholars from all over the world. If there are people you could also want to recommend to join the board, you're also welcome. If we're also hoping that some of the papers presented here would be considered or would be submitted for consideration in the journal. So this is a journal really which is about um, testing the limits of Western knowledge, but also this can be done both from within and outside the system as well. So on that note, I would like to encourage you to have a look at the journal, although the website is still under construction, and hopefully it might take up to the end of the month to get it into a space that we want it to. But what we're trying to do here is just to open up the spaces, to challenge ways of knowing and being, but also looking at how we can actually engage in pluralizing knowledge production. And this appeals across all the disciplines, whether it's more science or arts or humanities. It applies in terms of all facets of human interaction. So on that note, I would like to thank you and thank my partner in crime, Professor Richard Hall,